Going wild boar trapping is never an easy outing. No matter how modern your equipment is or how carefully you prepare, the wilderness always has a way of delivering surprises that no one can predict. A minor incident caused by a harmless animal or the survival instincts of a wild boar driven into a corner can instantly turn a routine trapping operation into a life or death confrontation. This morning, Nick and his team experienced exactly that when a trapped wild boar suddenly went berserk and charged straight at them. The operation began the previous day when Nick and his team carefully prepared the trap sites. They meticulously installed the first steel cage trap at a trail intersection and completed the installation of another large cage trap near a cornfield. However, an unexpected setback occurred at the main trap site. Curious rats had chewed through the trigger cable, damaging the trap's activation system. Undeterred, Nick quickly repaired the mechanism before carefully spreading sweet corn bait to lure wild boars into the trap. Just as expected, when darkness fell, the scent of fresh corn attracted a sounder of wild boars into the trap. Clang! The newly repaired gate slammed shut with tremendous force. It turned into a highly successful night as several other trap sites were also triggered. The trap near the cornfield closed. The second central trap was activated. And the trap along the forest edge also successfully captured wild boars during the night. At first light, Nick began checking the trap sites. His first stop was the cage trap that had been damaged by rats the previous day. But an extremely dangerous and completely unexpected situation unfolded. The presence of people caused one of the trapped wild boars to panic violently. Screaming and thrashing, it rammed through a barrier with all its strength before suddenly charging directly at Nick and his teammates. Thanks to their quick reflexes and composure, they narrowly avoided the attack and successfully brought the animal under control. Nick let out a sigh of relief before loading all the trapped wild boars onto the truck. Before they had fully recovered from the terrifying encounter, Nick moved on to the next large cage trap. Inside the trap, a large group of wild boars was furious and highly agitated. To ensure everyone's safety, Nick quickly dispatched the animals before loading them onto the pickup truck. The work became increasingly intense. At the trap located along the forest edge, Nick approached for the morning inspection. The trapped wild boars immediately became extremely aggressive. They repeatedly rammed the cage, desperately trying to break free and charge at anyone nearby. Using accurate shots, Nick safely dealt with the dangerous animals before loading the wild boars onto the truck. At the remaining 2 trap sites, the work was completed much more quickly. At the trap installed the previous day, Nick found a single wild boar waiting inside. He quickly dealt with it and loaded it onto the truck. At the next trap, only one wild boar had been captured as well, allowing Nick and his teammates to finish the job efficiently. Finally, the team returned to the second cage trap that had been installed the previous evening. The trapped wild boars squealed loudly and became highly agitated as people approached. Nick completed the final processing, loaded the wild boars onto the truck, and headed home, bringing an exciting and highly successful wild boar trapping operation to a close. Under the bright Texas midday sun, pickup trucks heavily loaded with wild boars slowly rolled down the dusty road toward the ranch. Nick's heart was still racing as he recalled the terrifying moment when the trapped wild boar suddenly broke free and charged at him. Today's wild boar trapping operation was not only an outstanding success, but also a powerful reminder of how unpredictable the wilderness can be. A wild animal cornered inside a trap can become incredibly dangerous in an instant. Yet through calm judgment, quick reactions, and the reliability of their well-built trapping system, Nick and his team safely overcame every challenge, protecting themselves while helping keep their farmland safe from destructive wild boars. By daylight, this field may still look normal, but after just one night, by the next morning, the soil has been torn apart in patches, roots ripped upward, empty spaces left behind as if something passed through and swept away every ounce of hard work. What worries them is not only the scale of destruction, but the fact that it returns almost every night, consistent, relentless, and unpredictable. And that is the sign that if no action is taken in time, an entire harvest could disappear. That is exactly why our team is here again, to install traps strong enough and solid enough to hold the line. Without wasting time, we completed the first net trap that same day on the southern edge of the forest. Before long, it gave its first signal. One boar had been caught inside, but instead of staying contained, it reacted violently, charging straight into the netted gate again and again. The mesh stretched tight, shaking wildly with every impact. The decision was made immediately after that. We would not dismantle the old trap, but we would no longer rely on this type of system. At once, on the northern side of the forest, where the terrain was tighter and more enclosed, a different setup was built, a steel door trap. Heavier frame, stronger locks, a gravity drop gate that did not depend on tension like netting. It only needed to be strong enough to withstand a direct hit from a herd of wild boars. When everything was ready, we waited in silence for nightfall. The tension in the air was so thick that no one said a word. Then the first movement appeared. The smell of bait quickly drew in the herd. And when the moment came, when every last one had stepped inside, click, the trigger was activated. The gate dropped shut. Inside, several boars reacted instantly. They burst into frantic motion, searching for an escape. But every direction was sealed. Metal rang out in sharp beats. Short, clean, final. We looked at one another. For the first time, the trap had worked exactly as intended. At another point near the forest edge, the reinforced trap set by Tom did not take long to activate either. Though it caught only a few, it would still reduce the damage to this season's crops for the local farmers. Once the trap was sprung, the boars tried to escape by instinct. But that was impossible. They had been fully contained inside the solid structure we had spent so much effort preparing. And it did not stop there. Texas is home to more than 3 million feral hogs. So together with landowners, we often place traps like these out in the fields. The trap in this area became another hotspot, stirring up noise at the edge of the woods. When large, powerful boars were found contained inside, it proved one thing clearly. The system was working exactly as we had planned. Every time a trap was triggered, we did not rush to celebrate. But at the very least, everyone felt a little more at ease. The traps continued to be reinforced. We continued the control operation. This time, we were determined to catch every last one, to leave them no chance to damage this area again. Every year, our state of Texas alone suffers around $400, $500 million in economic losses caused by wild hogs. This final night was considered the decisive one. Once again, we took our positions, held our breath, and waited. At the first trap, the herd had grown larger. Not only adults, but smaller ones as well entered the enclosure. The space inside began to tighten. Then, at the perfect moment, the trap let out a chilling clack. Instantly, movement inside became faster, more violent, more desperate. Heavy blows slammed into the steel frame. Metal rang out sharply. Others circled and shoved. The entire trap shook in waves. But this time, just like the night before, not a single one escaped. We kept watching, kept waiting, and then everything reached its peak. A massive herd appeared, not scattered individuals anymore, but a dense, moving flood. They fed greedily on the bait scattered across the ground until BM, the gate crashed down. At once, the trap exploded with noise inside. Feet pounding the dirt, steel bars rattling without pause. And in that moment, we understood more clearly than ever. If the trap system had not been strong enough, everything would have burst apart. The next morning, we did not dismantle the trap right away, because we knew there was still more out there, and we were right. Another large herd had been caught just before dawn. When we walked past, they became even more agitated. Several slammed into the steel frame so hard the entire trap shook repeatedly. And do you know what was inside that cage? The very reason those fields have been destroyed for weeks. As everything gradually came under control, the farm grew quiet again. No more fresh tracks each morning. No more furrows torn open after every night. This was not a hunt. This was the only way to save the harvest. Because once wild boars discover a stable food source, they do not stop on their own. In situations like this, what do you think matters more? A trap strong enough, or the patience to wait for the perfect moment? Leave your thoughts below. The battle to protect the ranch from the invasion of feral hogs has never been a straightforward one. These animals not only reproduce at an astonishing rate, but they also roam across vast territories, constantly shifting their range from dense brushland to the depths of open woodlands. To deal with such a highly mobile enemy, a hunter cannot simply sit in one place and wait. It requires a full-scale operation, scouting for fresh sign, strategically placing traps in ideal locations, systematically clearing captured groups, and constantly relocating to cut off every branch of the sounder. Every successful operation begins with careful scouting. Nick started the day by walking along dense game trails. His trained eyes quickly spotted freshly rooted patches of soil and the distinctive tracks left behind by feral hogs that had passed through only recently. Following those signs, he came upon a cage trap that had already been triggered. Inside, a massive feral hog had been captured completely. Knowing how these animals move through the landscape, Nick headed to another area to search for the next ideal trap location. After securing the heavy steel trap, he spread a thick layer of sweet corn bait infused with a strong scent to attract the hog's highly sensitive noses. Later that afternoon, after spotting through his binoculars that the trap had sprung, Nick carefully approached it one step at a time to avoid alarming the animal inside. With a single accurate, humane shot, he dispatched the aggressive feral hog that was desperately trying to escape. However, isolated traps only solve part of the problem. The real battle takes place in the heart of the ranch, a vast open area where Nick had installed a massive corral trap capable of holding dozens of hogs. The results from this large-scale trapping site were enough to astonish anyone. An enormous sounder of feral hogs, ranging from fully grown adults to young piglets, have been captured inside. As Nick approached to begin processing them, the entire enclosure erupted with deafening squeals and furious grunts. The hogs became wildly agitated, repeatedly slamming themselves against the steel panels. To handle this record-breaking catch, Nick used a narrowing system that gradually compressed the trap, encouraging the hogs from behind until they naturally ran straight into the transport cage waiting on the truck. Without taking a break after this major success, Nick immediately switched to a rolling clearance strategy. He drove to another trap located along the outer fence line. The feral hogs inside quickly became agitated as they noticed the hunter approaching. Once that group had been processed, he immediately packed up the equipment and moved to an entirely new location to intercept other sounders before they could spread further. At another trap baited with corn the previous night, the trail camera showed that the feral hogs had been completely drawn in by the sweet scent. Only a few minutes after the lead hog stepped inside and triggered the gate, the entire sounder was cleanly trapped. The process of loading the hogs onto the truck was carried out efficiently with the help of mechanical lifting equipment. The final stop of the day was a double cage trap. Inside were two large, aggressive adult feral hogs. Drawing on years of experience, Nick skillfully guided the two hogs into a smaller transport cage. He then used a pulley system to lift the entire steel cage, with both hogs still inside, safely and neatly onto the bed of the pickup truck. As the pickup truck, loaded with the day's harvest, rolled back toward the central garage, darkness had already settled across the Texas countryside. Looking back on a non-stop day that saw dozens of feral hogs removed from the landscape, the physical exhaustion seemed to fade, replaced by a deep sense of relief. This full-scale operation leaves an important lesson for anyone involved in farming. Combating an invasive species cannot depend on luck or impulsive action. It demands a cool head, sharp tactical thinking, and the determination to carry out a systematic, rolling operation without pause. Removing feral hogs is about far more than protecting this season's crops. It is a long-term commitment to the land itself, a commitment to preserving the ranch's balance, its productivity, and the peace of mind that future harvests depend on. We are members of a wild hog control team in Oklahoma, and at Twin Eagle Ranch, there is no room for mistakes. More than 1,000 hectares of farmland are being destroyed day by day, fields torn apart, irrigation systems shattered, young corn and soybean sprouts wiped out in a single night. This is no longer a small problem. This is a fight for the survival of an entire harvest, and we do not rely on brute force, but on strategy. The screen of the Hawkeye camera we placed beside 3 big pig traps along the forest edge suddenly lit up. The hogs were in position. The bait, rooting juice, a mix of rotten cheese scent and sweet corn, was doing its job. 1:57 a.m. Dark shadows quietly entered the trap zone. No sound, no sign of suspicion. Wait a little longer. One more. Now, I hit the button. The round trap gate slammed shut. Instantly, the silence was ripped apart by the dry clang of metal striking metal. The hogs inside panicked, hurling themselves into the steel frame with such force that the whole area seemed to shake. The chaos lasted for several minutes before they finally realized they were completely trapped. To make sure nothing had gone wrong, we jumped into the Jeep Gladiator that same night and sped down the dirt trails. When the headlights hit the trap, the scene became crystal clear. The entire sounder, including hogs weighing over 200 pounds, had been captured. After the forest edge area had been disturbed, the hogs began shifting toward lower ground. To block their movement, I decided to set 2 additional octagon-style traps near the livestock pens. It was a narrow position directly along the trail they regularly used to reach water. Fresh rooting marks in the soil proved this had become the new hotspot. 9:21 p.m. The screen vibrated with movement. A large group entered. They sniffed, tested every steel bar. The tension weighed on every second. My hand stayed on the trigger button. Not too early, not too late. I held my breath. This is the moment. Press it. The steel frame shook violently. The hogs inside lost all sense of direction, crashing into one another in the darkness while their bodies slammed against the steel mesh. The chaos peaked before they slowly exhausted themselves and were locked in tight. Less than 2 hours later, at 10:50 p.m., the second trap alerted. This group was more cautious, just as they seemed to sense something was wrong. I activated the trap in time. 2 sounders, 1 night, full control. Deep in the woods is where the large boars usually hide during the day. There, I used a reinforced box trap built with a specially strengthened steel frame. Through the camera, I watched them circle outside. They inspected everything, moved around again and again. I did not rush. Patience is the only weapon that matters. When the whole group was fully inside the zone, I triggered it. The gate dropped shut. Hogs weighing more than 250 pounds went wild, smashing into the walls of the trap with deafening force. Panic swallowed the entire group until they understood every effort was useless. They had fallen into a trap calculated down to the inch. After the hogs were secured, we handled the site safely and efficiently. The muddy ground after the rain unexpectedly worked in our favor, making it easier to drag the heavy animals thanks to the slick surface. We used a trailer and truck combination to move the load. Once finished, the hogs were divided into 2 parts. One portion sent to a professional processing facility, the rest donated to local families to prepare as food themselves. Everything ended cleanly, restoring peace to the ranch. This is not a numbers game. This is a battle of minds. Observation, patience, perfect timing. One small mistake, and everything falls apart. But when everything works exactly as planned, we do not just catch wild hogs. We take back the fields. When darkness falls over the vast cornfields of Texas, a silent threat begins to awaken. The sound of rustling footsteps, heavy breathing, and razor-sharp tusks ready to tear through any field they cross fills the night. For Nick, confronting the invasive wild boars is more than just manual labor. It is a true battle of wits. The boars are becoming smarter, more cautious, and more cunning with each passing day. Every night, the same question remains. Will the traps he has carefully designed and placed throughout the farm still be effective against the growing pressure of these destructive animals? To capture these experienced wild boars, the first step is always understanding their behavior. Through his nighttime surveillance cameras, Nick carefully watches the activity around a trap baited with corn. The sweet scent quickly attracts a sounder of wild boars toward the trap. They circle the area before gradually moving inside. However, two large adult boars remain extremely cautious. They constantly sniff the air, lingering around the outer edge and refusing to cross the entrance. Nick holds his breath. After nearly 30 minutes of patient waiting, hunger finally overcomes their fear, and they step into the center of the trap. Instantly, the heavy gate slams shut, cutting off every possible escape route. As dawn breaks, Nick begins checking the results. Instead of walking directly into potentially dangerous areas, he first relies on modern technology. A drone lifts into the sky, providing a live aerial view that allows him to inspect each trap safely from a distance. The infrared cameras confirm that the main trap has been successfully triggered. As Nick approaches through the morning mist to inspect the catch, he finds the enclosure packed with wild boars. His presence immediately agitates the animals, and the entire group crashes violently against the steel panels while squealing loudly. To handle such a large catch, Nick backs his pickup truck directly against the trap entrance and guides the adult boars straight into the truck bed. For safety and easier handling, he carefully separates the smaller piglets and places them into a separate portable cage. After dealing with the main trap, Nick continues inspecting the secondary trap lines. The first is a small trap hidden within the main farm area. It has successfully captured a lone wild boar that wandered in looking for leftover food. Nick quickly transfers the animal into a portable holding cage, then lifts the sturdy container onto his pickup for transport. Moving to an open area beside the fence, another cage trap has captured a large, aggressive wild boar. To load the stubborn animal without excessive effort, Nick assembles a portable steel chute connecting the trap directly to the truck bed. Pressured from behind, the wild boar has little choice but to run straight through the chute and into the truck. Finally, Nick visits the location of a massive new cage trap he installed only a few days earlier. His careful planning has paid off. The enclosure is packed with wild boars. One by one, they are professionally loaded into the truck, bringing an exceptionally successful day of trapping to a close. Under the bright Texas midday sun, the sound of the pickup truck gradually fades, replaced by the gentle rustling of wine through the green cornfields. Looking at the now empty traps after such a productive day, Nick finally breathes a sigh of relief. The question that lingered the night before has now been answered. The traps worked exceptionally well, but that success did not happen by chance. It was the result of years of field experience, the patience required to outsmart wild animals minute by minute, and the valuable support of modern technology, such as drones and smart trapping systems. Every wild boar removed helps protect the hard work of local farmers and reinforces one simple belief. Through intelligence and perseverance, people can continue defending their land against every new invasion. More than 150 pounds of rippling muscle, razor-sharp tusks, and a breeding speed far beyond control. We are slowly losing ground to wild boars if we keep relying on traditional trapping methods. As wildlife control managers in Texas, we bring a new control tool here. Soft, but impossible to break. But to capture an entire group of intelligent wild boars, old steel cages are no longer enough. We need a smarter strategy, a soft net trapping system called Pig Brig. The whole team moved immediately. Everyone had their role, working in perfect coordination. The heavy hammer strikes drove 7-foot steel stakes deep into the hard ground. The Pig Brig net was carefully suspended. Fermented corn bait was spread evenly from the outside toward the center. Sweat soaked through our protective clothing, but a perfect trap was finally ready. At a trap site near the forest edge, a large herd of boars had appeared. They were eagerly feeding on the fermented corn bait inside the net, completely unaware that they were already trapped. Outside, a few scout boars still stood back in the darkness, alert, watching, testing. They absolutely refused to step inside. The next morning, we drove to the site to inspect the overnight catch. Everything inside the trap became tense immediately. Every boar panicked and ran wildly the moment they saw human figures approaching. A full herd of wild boars of every size. Big ones, small ones. They charged continuously at the net walls. But it was useless. The Pig Brig net absorbed every impact. With no hard surface to push against, they quickly exhausted themselves, and everything was brought under control. The net trap had done its job perfectly, but the wild boars were still out there, and we could not allow ourselves to become careless. Noticing that the herd had started changing its travel route, I decided to establish a new trap point in an open grassy area between the forest and the farmland. During the first few days, we rolled the lower edge of the net upward. Bait was spread from the outside inward. This was the familiarization stage, allowing them to move freely in and out. When the camera reported back, an 80-pound scout boar stepped forward first. It sniffed around the net, carefully feeding outside the trap. The others stood farther away, watching. But eventually, the temptation of food won. Later, they finally pushed their snouts forward and slipped completely inside the net. The trap quietly closed without a single sound. Their survival instinct had been deceived by a design that felt too natural. The next morning, bright sunlight filled the sky. We approached the open field. The harsh sunlight made me squint, my chest pounding at the scene in front of me. Once again, chaos. A large herd of boars was desperately trying to escape. One huge boar, weighing no less than 120 pounds, pushed its front legs upward, trying to climb over the 7-foot net wall. Dust flew everywhere. They slammed continuously into the net walls. The entire area looked like it had been torn apart by pure panic. The following night, the clock showed nearly 9 p.m. The herd arrived. They pushed their snouts under the net close to the ground, fighting each other to get inside and reach the bait, only to become trapped almost immediately. The principle of the trap is one way: easy to enter, impossible to leave. But suddenly, my heartbeat sped up. I cursed quietly under my breath. One boar entering had accidentally exposed a small opening, and another immediately slipped backward and escaped. It happened in an instant. Nature always finds a way to punish the smallest mistakes, forcing us to be even more careful with every detail of the setup. The hardest mission waited at the final trap point. Last year, this entire area had been completely destroyed by wild boars. Not even a blade of grass remained. We patiently waited several more days for the boars to grow familiar with the presence of the net. When we finally saw signs that they had started entering the trap to feed, I lowered the net, but intentionally left a tiny part of the entrance slightly open. A psychological trap designed to lure the most stubborn ones deeper inside. The result finally came. After a long period of monitoring, we successfully captured a massive male boar weighing around 140 pounds. And when dawn arrived, my breathing grew heavier with every step forward. Inside the net, the giant male boar and its herd were crowded together in complete chaos, desperately trying to break free. They slammed into every corner, turned in circles, bit wildly at everything around them. The entire steel stake system shook violently under the force of their power. But every escape attempt became hopeless. The confinement had been established completely. Controlling wild boars is not about fighting muscle with muscle. It is a game of patience, reading tracks, and understanding animal behavior. When that knowledge is combined with smart tools, we do not just protect the farm's property. We complete the mission safely, professionally, and responsibly. Three long months under the blazing sun and pouring rain, carefully nurturing every green shoot and tending every row of cassava and corn with endless sweat and hope. Yet in just one night, all the hard work of a Texas farmer was reduced to a devastated battlefield. A sounder of feral hogs mercilessly tore through the fields, rooting up the soil and trampling leaves and stalks into ruins just to dig out a few tender roots beneath the ground. Looking at the destroyed farmland, the farmer's heart sank with grief. This was no longer an ordinary effort to stop crop damage. It had become a campaign of retribution to protect their livelihood and defend the pride of those who live by the land. To deal with these destructive animals that had grown accustomed to raiding crops, Nick knew anger would solve nothing. He began the operation with a patient baiting strategy. First, he scattered sweet corn around the trap site every day without setting the trap, allowing the feral hogs to develop a natural feeding routine and gradually lose their caution. When the timing was right, the trap was finally set and activated. The feral hogs filed into the enclosure one after another to feast on the bait without the slightest suspicion. Snap! The trap slammed shut with absolute precision. Nick immediately arrived and quickly dispatched the destructive feral hogs, bringing this group's rampage across the farmland to an end. At another corner of the property bordering the woods, Nick set another trap and spread fresh bait. The feral hogs were soon drawn in by the sweet scent of food. As darkness fell, the smart trap activated automatically, allowing him to capture the entire sounder of cunning feral hogs. The battle reached its climax late that night. Through a thermal imaging camera, Nick watched the massive corral trap slam shut in the darkness. Early the next morning, he rushed to the scene. To handle such a large group of feral hogs, Nick began installing a sloped wire mesh loading chute that connected the trap directly to the bed of his pickup truck. After relentless pressure, the panicked feral hogs finally ran straight through the chute and successfully loaded into the truck. To save time, Nick launched a drone to survey the ranch and discovered another sounder of feral hogs had already been caught in the next trap. However, the moment Nick approached the trap with his utility vehicle, the trapped animals became extremely agitated, repeatedly ramming the steel panels while letting out loud grunts. The roar of the engine only frightened them further, sending them racing around the enclosure in search of an escape. All that remained for Nick and his team was to quickly secure the animals before heading home. In addition to capturing entire sounders, Nick also had to deal with the most cunning and aggressive solitary hogs. In a field of tall grass, he spread corn to lure in a true monster of the night. The result was astonishing as he successfully trapped a gigantic boar. After repeatedly slamming into the steel cage, the boar had injured its snout, leaving it bloodied and extremely aggressive, ready to charge anyone who came near. Remaining calm, Nick skillfully used food to lure the boar into a smaller holding cage, then safely loaded the massive boar onto his truck. At another trap near a cornfield, Nick discovered a large solitary feral hog caught inside. He carefully connected the trap to a portable holding cage, guided the feral hog into the smaller cage for easier handling, then pushed the cage onto the bed of his pickup truck. Finally, for the last stubborn feral hog, Nick carefully backed his pickup truck into position to connect the wire mesh loading chute directly to the trap. With just a few firm movements to drive it forward, the feral hog ran straight up into the truck bed safely and cleanly. Beneath the brilliant golden sun of the Texas plains, the sound of the pickup truck carrying its hard-earned catch gradually faded into the horizon. Looking back at the fields that had been ripped apart, Nick knew that losses were an unavoidable part of choosing a life tied to this rugged land. Yet the greatest lesson from this cleanup operation was the unbreakable spirit of the farmer. 3 months of hard work can be destroyed in a single night, but no wild animal can ever crush the human will. Through careful preparation, patient trapping, and courage during close encounters, farmers can clear their land of these destructive invaders, restore the rich green landscape of their ranches, and continue planting the next season's abundant harvests. The moment we received the report, the rapid response specialists from the Texas Wildlife Management Agency, set out immediately. In the back of the truck was the game-changer trapping system. Without wasting any time, the whole team immediately began checking every footprint and every patch of torn-up soil to trace the movement of the herd. The first trap location was a narrow, dry creek bed, where the tight terrain made a small modular trap the only possible option. The signal flashed. Through the infrared camera, the entire herd had entered the trap, completely absorbed in eating the bait. After one deep, controlled breath, my finger pressed the trigger without hesitation, and the heavy steel gate slammed shut, tearing through the silence of the night. Not stopping at the first result, we continued checking the system and quickly shifted to the next target. The herd had already entered, but a few large males still hesitated outside, snorting and sensing something unusual in the wind. Waiting meant the boars inside would finish eating and leave, but acting immediately would allow the ones outside to escape. There was no perfect choice. I tightened my hand and decisively pressed the drop trap command. The gate slammed shut instantly. The boars outside vanished into the darkness in panic within seconds, while inside the cage, chaos erupted violently. Heavy bodies crashed wildly in every direction, slamming into the steel frame like waves hitting rock. The third trap point, deep inside the forest, had movement. The exhaustion disappeared instantly. This area was completely different because the wild boars here reacted with extreme aggression when cornered, forcing us to deploy a large circular trap. No sharp corners, no pressure points. The camera screen lit up, clearly showing a large herd gathering beneath the feeder, each one stepping inside without the slightest suspicion. The decisive moment had arrived. Both drop gates were triggered at the same time. The boars froze for a split second before their wild instincts took over. They ran in circles, colliding and crushing against each other, creating a sound of hooves mixed with violently shaking metal. Near the orchard, the boars here were extremely intelligent. They feared narrow entrances. Traditional drop gates became useless. The best solution this time was 2 fully suspended cage traps. No doors, no walls, no visible danger. The herd slowly moved in, cautious and suspicious, finding nothing unusual. The moment the last sow crossed the line, the drop command was confirmed. The entire heavy steel frame dropped freely to the ground. The boars jumped in terror, crashing wildly into everything in complete panic. But the solid steel structure held them in place. The gamble was over, and this time, we won completely. But did you know, behind every successful trap closure is an entire system calculated down to the smallest detail. We use flexible steel modules. Steel mesh is locked together with quick pins, and anchor stakes are driven several feet deep to withstand the force of hundreds of pounds of impact. During the first days, bait is scattered everywhere, so the herd loses suspicion. On the decisive night, the bait is placed only in the farthest corner inside the trap, forcing them to push their entire bodies into the fully secured zone. Only when technology and psychology work together perfectly can we reclaim peace for the fields. The moment we arrived at the site and stood beside the steel mesh, we could truly see how terrifying they were. Massive blocks of muscle, skin thick like armor. They carried diseases that threatened both livestock and native wildlife. Without allowing the herd's panic to continue any longer, we immediately carried out the final step of the process. Every handling procedure was done right there from outside the trap. No unnecessary prolonged panic.
Yep, it's a tighter slick. Yep. You hear him in there?
Every wild boar captured is not simply another number on a report. It means fields saved, irrigation systems no longer destroyed, and an entire ecosystem protected from silent devastation. If you want to witness more fast-paced and intense control operations like this, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next video. Two 20-foot pig brig net trap systems are already in place. The moment the hogs sense human presence, panic erupts inside the trap. They slam violently into the net walls, trampling over each other in a desperate attempt to escape. Dust explodes into the air, mixing with sharp, piercing squeals. But the net flexes, absorbing every impact and keeping them contained. To achieve this, we had been calculating and preparing for days. This system demands absolute patience. On Thursday night, we set the trap in conditioning mode. The net was suspended high on 6-foot steel T-posts, with dozens of pounds of corn spread evenly below. The hogs fed freely without feeling threatened. A few days later, we switched to capture mode. The net was lowered. Everything was ready, but wild hogs are not easy to fool. Camera data came in just after 1 a.m. Tension built in my chest as I watched the herd circle the trap on my phone screen. They were smarter than expected. The entire group stayed outside, using their snouts to eat the bait around the edges. Not a single one stepped fully under the hanging net. That was the real test. If we lost patience and intervened, we'd lose everything. Nearly an hour later, the lead sow finally gave in to hunger. She lifted the edge of the net with her snout and slipped inside. The rest followed immediately. Success. The next morning, as we approached, the entire group was in chaos. Mud splattered across the net, hooves sliding violently across the soaked ground until we began restraining them one by one. Around 11 p.m., the camera showed a large boar slowly approaching a circular cage trap with a netted entrance. It was extremely cautious, feeding only at the edge, its body not fully inside. Finally, it stepped fully inside. The 200-pound mass stood still for a moment, confused, chewing corn as if it hadn't yet realized it was trapped. That night, we headed out again to another trap site near a livestock farm. We arrived on site. A teammate pointed quietly to a torn section of net. Earlier, a hog had escaped through that exact spot. We had patched it, but the backup clips weren't strong enough. Wild hogs have excellent memory. If this one found that weak point again, it could escape. We weren't taking that risk. A single, decisive shot rang out. The threat was neutralized instantly. The next morning, we returned to clear the site. The hogs inside were still aggressive. Our muscles tensed as we tightened our grip on specialized catch poles. The loop snare tightened just enough to control each animal's resistance. Working in sync, we secured them one by one and loaded them efficiently onto the pickup truck. By early afternoon, the pickup stopped at the final trap site. The most destructive individuals in the area were here. Inside, they charged and slammed into the net in desperation. We continued processing them one by one. The job ended as the sun began to dip. Exhaustion set in, but the control operation was complete.
Roll. Yeah. Get turned.